Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Ferriniars, and I'm the Executive Director of the Greenwich Alliance for Education. And I thank you for coming today to participate in our AVID Success Career Panel for Greenwich High School AVID students. I'm now going to pass over this conversation to Senora Rabasa, who will moderate this panel. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Julie. Welcome panelists to my AVID 10 classroom. I did a quick drive-by. Hope you got to see some faces. Apparently, some students may know some of the panelists here, so I think that's a great thing. Welcome to our class. So what I'm going to ask first from all of you is a short introduction just by saying your name and your career to get started. And then we'll transition to each one of you speaking individually. I'll try my best to call on you each by name. So let's start with that. Let's start at the top. I'm just looking at my screen at the top. I think I have, am I correct, Kaan?
Kaan Aslansan. Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. I might know some of the people there, probably not, but it's Kaan Aslansan. I'm what you call a management consultant. So I work, I spend my time helping companies figure out some of their problems. When they can't, they call my company, they bring me in, and I focus on media and entertainment. So some of the things that you guys watch, Netflix, Hulu, HBO, those are a lot of my clients. In some cases, I help them figure out how to make more money. And in some cases, I help them how to do things much cheaper. Is that pretty much it on the intro?
Introduction, yeah, and then we will go into detailed explanations. Thank you very much. Our next panelist for introduction is Michael Manning. I think you're muted.
By the way, I'm with a group of high school students as well, so they got a kick out of that. Anyway, Michael Manning, I'm an artist and educator. I'm actually also with a group of 10th grade high school students.
Great, thank you very much. Next panelist, Sydney Kay.
Hi everyone, it's Sydney. I am a mechanical engineer and I design baggage systems at airports.
Great, and our fourth panelist, Ruth Sherman.
Hey everybody, I'm Ruth Sherman and my job is as a speech and media coach for CEOs, celebrities, and public figures. I help those people become better at communicating publicly. So whether they have to speak to the New York Times or they have to give a keynote speech, or if they're out there trying to sell their companies, I help them do that more effectively. 6 of my clients have won Oscars. I just had one win the other day, and one has won the Pulitzer Prize. So I look forward to being here, and I'm glad to be with you.
Great, thank you so much. So at this point, I'm going to call on the panelists individually to give a little bit more of a detailed explanation, maybe between 3 and 4 minutes. It's my understanding that you were shared a document for this information. So I will call on each one of you, and then we will do some questions. My students are actually kind of up and about handing me some questions on Post-its. I'll also see if we can manage. Some of them will be questions in general, and then some of them actually have your names on it, and I will directly address you to answer those questions. Okay, so let's start with a little bit more detailed explanation. We'll start back at the top with Kaan, please.
Hi, yeah, so I graduated GHS in 1991, so many moons ago. I remember I took my SATs. I did really well in math, and I did really bad in the written essay, whatever it was called. I can't remember. So I decided, that being the case, I'd go down the engineering route. and I went to a school called Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, which is an engineering school in upstate New York, if you haven't heard of it. And decided I'd go down the electrical engineering route. And then within the first semester, I failed every class and was extremely nervous, didn't know what to do, and decided to leave. And then the college counselor convinced me to go more into the business area and learn more about business and business management, learn a bit more about computer science and how it applies to business. So I graduated with an industrial engineering degree with a focus on management. That's in essence. So for me, I'm the classic example of I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I was good in math. Clearly, I wasn't good enough to be an electrical engineer. So I took a few other classes and then I graduated in 1995 with that. College was exciting, mainly because it gave me an opportunity to decide that 4 years of school is all I ever wanted. And I was nervous that I would need to get a master's, I would need to get some more education. I decided not to. And this company called Ernst & Young interviewed me, and they were looking for kids that knew how to use computers and know how to do a little bit of programming, and they would teach them the business. And that's how my career got started in the whole consulting business. And my first client was HBO. So I got to work on a cool project with some cool clients, and that's when I really started building my network. I started to go to a lot of industry events. I started getting more into the types of things the company would do in terms of having training courses, meetups, and this whole sort of pool of people that I got to work with, all, you know, as they graduated out of Ernst & Young and went to different companies, they in essence started becoming my clients. And that's how I built my overall sort of network of people that I work with, that I sell to. And then I've just grown from it from that perspective. So day to day, what do I do? So clients call me and say, hey, you know, when we do these sorts of things at our company, it costs too much and we're not making enough money. And so they hire somebody like me to come in. I look for where they're wasting their money, where they're spending more than they should. I give them scenarios of what other things they could that they could do, and build that sort of recommendation, and then I help them actually implement it. So honestly, what I learned in college, what I do in work, you know, they're two really different things. I don't think they always have to match. I think what college gave me was an opportunity to fail at something and understand I could, you know, reverse my thinking, look at something else, look at it a different way. So that whole type of flexibility is really what I got out of it. Starting in a job like mine is really very much for people that graduate college and still don't really know what they want to do. And what you get to do in consulting is you get to work for a lot of different variety of companies, different departments in companies. And so as you do that more and more, you start understanding really what you love, what your passion is, and then you can come out of consulting and do that full time. Interesting stories from a work perspective. I think there's too many, but I think the most interesting is, you know, getting to go to a studio, watch how movies are actually made, the amount of work that's put into and cost and work and construction that goes into putting a feature movie on, and then how much financial views are looked at in terms of where they make money in every way that they put a movie out, is just it's always been interesting to me, and I enjoy it very much. So that's a wrap up for me. I don't know if I took up 4 minutes or more, but, and if there's questions, I'll answer them, or if you're keeping that to the end. we can
That's
move
great.
on.
I'll keep it till the end, and then I have a few questions that actually will be directed to you that they've already submitted. So we'll come back to you in a few
Uh-oh.
moments. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so our next panelist up, we're gonna go with Sydney, please.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Sydney. I graduated from Fairfield Ludlow High School in 2012. I went on to the University of New Hampshire. I started at the University of New Hampshire as a marine biology undergrad major. It just was something that sounded cool to me when I was coming out of high school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Similar as before, I stopped that after my first semester when I realized that biology was definitely not for me. I was more of a numbers person and science like that. So I switched into the engineering department. And then at the end of my sophomore year, I decided to declare mechanical engineering as my undergrad. So I was a little behind when I started my engineering because they track the engineers a little bit differently. So right then and there, I knew that I was going to need to add on another year of school. I was also on the track team at UNH. So I was able to talk with my coaches and I spaced out my track career there also over the 5 years. School was very hard for me. I was not the best test taker. I loved anything that was hands-on, but when it came time to tests, which I'm sure some people can relate to, that was not my strong suit. I was really lucky to have some really great professors though that knew test taking wasn't where I was great at, and they were able to help me get through it and graduate. So I graduated in 2017 from the University of New Hampshire. When I was a senior and a fifth year, I went to a bunch of the college and career fairs, the internship and career fairs at my school, just to try and start looking to see what I wanted to do. I still wasn't really sure about it. And then I put out my little LinkedIn photo to the WWW. A friend of a friend saw it. They spoke to someone that worked at an engineering company. I went through a bunch of interviews with them, and that's how I started in this mechanical engineering role. I started part-time at the company, and I was also coaching at Weston High School when I first started. And then this really took off. And I now work for another company, not that same one, but I'm doing the same thing. So I design baggage systems at airports. So when you go and you're traveling and you check in your bag and it goes on a conveyor belt, all of those conveyor belts and the screening behind the scenes, that is what I'm working on a daily basis. So I work on airports all over the world. Sometimes we work for airports, sometimes we work for airlines. Really just depends on the project. But I was really specializing in some international projects. So I was really trying to take advantage of the projects I was working on, learn about those places. And then my coolest experience with my old company was I was working on a project in Doha, Qatar, and I was actually able to travel with the company over there. And while I was there, I made the most out of every single second and was exploring on any of my free time. I made the switch to my new company at the end of the year. I started January 18th at my new company, and everything so far has been going great. I work fully remote at this new job. So my company is actually based out of Dallas, Texas. So I went down there about a month after starting and met the whole team, and we got together. And then I've probably seen my coworkers about once a month. I actually just got home from a trip to Chicago yesterday, where I was able to meet up with 4 of them also. And yeah, so I work remote. We're on the computer all day. We're talking to each other all day on the computer, but it's nice to get together and have some of that face-to-face time. So yeah, that's about me.
Great, thank you, Sydney. Our next panelist, Ruth, please.
Hey, everybody. I started in high school to fall in love with music. So I wanted to be a movie star. And when I graduated from high school, I ended up majoring in music. I went to Kent State University, which is a big public institution in Ohio. So it's a state university of Ohio. I was a terrible student in high school. I was a pretty bad test taker. So even though I wanted to, I was good enough, I felt, to go to one of the elite conservatories in New York City. I'm from New Jersey originally. I live in Greenwich now. So even though I, as I was saying, went to the high school, and it was a big suburban high school, just like Greenwich High School, I really didn't do well. And the elite conservatories would take one look at my transcript and think, well, she probably won't be able to succeed here, because contrary to popular belief, you have to be kind of smart to major in the arts. So that was their loss. And so I ended up going again and majoring in music at Kent State. I came back to New Jersey and ended up in New York City, where I became what's called a jingle singer. So I sang commercials, and many of the commercials I sang were heard all over the world. And that was a great way to work during the day instead of at nights and on weekends, which is what you have to do at the theater. And make money, because it pays really well. And I really wanted to make good money. I didn't want to be a starving artist. So that's what I did for a long time. And then once that started to dry up, the work starts to dry up, unfortunately, as you get older. And even though I wasn't old at the time, you get to an age where, again, it just starts to go away. I thought, well, I've got to find something else to do. At the time, I was married. I had a child. At that point, both of my kids went to GHS, by the way, and both of them had Senora Rabasa as a teacher. So yes, Britt and Lily Olsen-Ecker, say hello. Yes, I know they'd want me to tell you. But as I went on to figure out what else I was going to do, I thought, well, maybe I'll become a social worker, or maybe I'll become a lawyer. And I looked very carefully into both of those professions and thought, I really wouldn't make very good, I wouldn't be very good at either of those. But what I could do, since I looked very carefully into them before I was going to put myself through grad school in both cases, I realized that I could help any of those types of people, other people in other jobs, present themselves well, because after all, that's what I had been doing for the prior dozen years. So I just sort of switched things around. I did go to graduate school. I went to NYU. I got a master's degree in speech and rhetoric, and I opened my own business. I was used to being on my own. I've never worked for another company. And so I was used to being on my own. I knew how to pick up the phone and call people. I knew how to get out there and meet people and build a network and keep trying until finally someone doesn't ask the magic question, which is, have you done this before? And so finally somebody didn't ask that question and they hired me, and then the rest, I built it from there. I don't advise that necessarily. I think it might be a better idea to go to work for a company that does what you want to do and learn the ropes from there. But I did it, and I was able to build my business from there until now, when I work primarily with senior leaders at corporations, global corporations. I just did a job for a Saudi Arabian entity. I just got off a call with the United Nations today, as a matter of fact. And as I mentioned earlier, one of my clients won an Academy Award on Sunday, and that makes 6 for me over many years. Kaan and I have something in common in terms of Netflix, having been a client over the years. Beyond that, so training people and helping them become better at their public communication is just fascinating for me. It's a great lift to see my client accept that Academy Award and say things that we talked about. That was really something else. And so I financed my college education. I did take loans. I did end up having to pay those back. Fine, I made that happen. But my parents, fortunately, to their eternal credit, were able to help me with that. Of course, college was super cheap in those days, even going out of state. So there's really no comparison to what you have to do today to pay for college. So I don't even want to, it's apples and oranges. I I think that that's about it. Are there any other, is there anything else I should cover before we move along?
No, that's great. I'll direct some questions to you momentarily also, so you'll be able to add on at that point.
Great.
Thanks, Ruth. Our next panelist, Michael Manning.
Hi, how are you? I had to unmute. I have an active audience, as I said, a group of high school students. Most of them are hearing this for the first time as well. Most of my career, I've been a professional studio artist. I have a BFA from the University of the Arts, which is in Philadelphia. Basically, my art career has enabled me to travel all around the world. I've been fortunate to be chosen as a representative for the city of Cincinnati, where I lived for a while. That got me going over to Europe and working with some German and French artists. So I've been able to go there quite often. I've lived in a number of different cities, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, all kind of connected to my art career. I guess back in 2009, I went back to grad school. And one of the reasons I went back to grad school later was my kids were of a certain age that it was a little bit easier. The other reason was to really broaden the connections that I already had established. That again was great, and I'll follow up on how that translates today. Shortly after that, I know all of you know who Ralph Mayo is. He's your headmaster. So I knew Ralph from Greenwich, and back at Eastern Middle School, he asked me to come in for a couple of days. Now, again, I had done workshops, organized camps, but I had not set out formally to be an educator. That my goal primarily still is to be a creative artist. Anyway, so I came in with Ralph for a couple of days to fill in. That led to a couple of weeks, a couple of months, a couple of years, and I wound up being there for 5 years. At that time, also, many of you know Mr. Q, who's one of the high school art teachers. While I was at Eastern, we started a program called the Developing Artist, which was funded by the Greenwich Alliance for Education. And basically, it's a program that brought professional artists into schools in Greenwich through funding, which then expanded with funding from the state of Connecticut and also the National Endowment for the Arts. So fast forward, I'm now working at a high school in New Rochelle. And the great thing about this is art is part of their core curriculum. It's not an elective for all of our sophomores, which is the age group you're talking about. So every sophomore has to take art, and it becomes a shared experience. It has a lot of benefits for that reason. One of the things I'm doing right now, Mr. Q and I have a studio in Old Greenwich, right off of Sound Beach Avenue. I know they all know where Chili Bear is, the print shop. So our studio is right there. And we run our own art practices out of there, and also any of the work that we do for the developing artists. Julie asked me earlier, what does my art practice mean? That just literally means the work that I do, the type of work that I do. It took me a couple of years to kind of figure out the balance between education and my own art practice, but at this point, it's kind of worked out. So it's working very well. Again, my kids are older. I have a kid at Greenwich High. He's a junior. I'm sure some of you may know him or have known him, Archer Manning. You've had him. You have him now? Oh, okay. He knew I was going to be on the call, but I didn't know that he was in one of your classes. Is he in the class right this minute? Okay, because I could say.
No, I already had him like 2 blocks ago.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Yeah. So anyway, currently I have a couple shows coming up. One in Montclair, which is where I went to graduate school, Montclair State. And then Ralph, sit down. I have a show in the Hamptons coming up at the Hamptons Fine Arts Fair. It's a really big art fair. It's last year I started showing out there, and it's really opened up a whole new world. We do a lot of work with the Brandt Foundation, which is in Greenwich. I'm sure a lot of the students have been there. And Ben and I are still actively doing programs that bring artists together with students. Over April break, we're doing some work with a musician in town by the name of Pete Francis. And we'll be doing a songwriting album cover workshop at the Boys and Girls Club. I also run programs for the Boys and Girls Club, so I'm there a couple days a week. A lot going on, but again, my kids are at an age where my time is more of my own. So that's about it.
That's great. Thank you so much. Now we're going to segue to sort of a potpourri of questions. I'm going to jump around from person to person, so listen up for your name. We have some pretty good student-generated questions. I was just taking a look, being sure that we're not going to really repeat too much of what you presented. I'm hoping they will piggyback on what you have presented. So let me see, let me take a look. The first question is for Sydney, and it's a good one. They're all good questions, but what's it like to be a woman in a STEM career, especially engineering, in which usually men dominate? I'll repeat the question. What is it like to be a woman in a STEM career, especially engineering, in which usually men dominate?
Men definitely do dominate it right now. When I was in school, I would say in my class with me, out of all of our graduating class, I've always been friends with the boys growing up. I don't know if that was just because of sports or how it was. So I don't see it as very threatening. Sometimes it's really nice for me to surprise people when you ask me what I do and I tell you I'm a mechanical engineer. That's not usually what someone's expecting. So it's nice to see the shock and be able to talk about my work and go from there. In the field, it's funny sometimes. I just got back. I was on site yesterday, walking around an airport that's very dirty, very old pieces. And sometimes the men don't think that I'm going to get my hands dirty and do the same thing. So again, I'm not one to shy away from something that a man typically does. I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty, and I just jump right in with it. It's always nice to see other female engineers when I'm out. My current company, I'm the only woman, and in my last company, there were about 100 people, and I would say there were 7 or so women. So I highly encourage other women to get into engineering. I love it. I like the way my brain works when I'm working. But I would say don't let it be a male-dominated field scare you away from doing that, for sure.
Great, thank you for your answer. My next question is directed to Kaan, and one of my students wants to know, what is your everyday life like?
Everyday life. Well, I have 3 kids, 2 at the high school and 1 at Eastern. So part of my everyday life is dealing with their drama. Second part of my day is my dogs, and then working in terms of, I've gotten to a point in my career where I have a set of clients. I in essence manage those clients. I work day to day on what's happening, how's the team doing, how are they doing, what we need to be, where are we with our projects, helping them understand what's next or how to implement what we've done, which I really enjoy, because it's really more now for me a function of communicating with people rather than doing work and handing it to them. and continuing to build those relationships. And then I end my days falling asleep on the couch watching TV. That's my day.
Sounds good. It's a good life. Thank you.
Yeah.
The next question is directed towards Michael. And a couple of students, I'm going to kind of blend this question because they're very similar. Finding job stability in the arts in your degree area tends to be difficult. So what was that process like for you in pursuing that career? Basically going beyond art being a hobby to making it your career. So what was that?
Yeah, it's definitely a career that you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot for. You know, when I first finished undergrad, I moved up to New York City, and I wound up managing a restaurant 3 days a week. So there are always things I had to do to support my art career, even though I'm able to sell my work, but when I sell and how much I sell, it could depend year to year. Creating the work is one thing, marketing it, promoting it, it's more of a job than actually creating it. So you're constantly have to balance that. So early on, there were a lot of things I've lived in warehouses with no heat, which was great. I would go back to that in a minute, but my wife absolutely won't let me. So yes, I was fortunate. Also, my wife was in marketing, so we had a nice balance between the stability of one of us having something consistent and me pursuing what I was doing, and also a family. So early on, the kids were in the studio with me all the time. So right now it's kind of reversed. So, but yeah, you absolutely have to think about that. At first, again, my goal wasn't to be an art teacher. It kind of happened with everything else I was doing, and now it kind of all makes sense. So you have to figure out where that balance is. But yeah, it can be a little bit difficult. I think now there's so many more opportunities in the field of art, especially because of what's happened with digital technology, that there's so many careers that you can go into. Before it was pretty much straightforward, like advertising, cut and paste, hand drawn things. Now that's opened up a lot more. So there are more opportunities. If you look at Mr. Q, who's the art teacher there, and myself, we have very similar backgrounds. We both see our primary job as being creative and producing our own work, and all the educational aspects are tied to that. It's not focused just on education or just on art. So I think I and he have been able to balance how that happens. It didn't happen quickly, and absolutely stability depending on the type of art, especially if you just want to be a fine artist, where you're just painting and sculpting or whatever you're doing. It's a drive that no matter what, that's what you want to do. So you are willing to give up certain things for that. But if you're consistent at it, as with everything, something comes of it.
Great, thank you. My next question is for Ruth. Here's the big question of the day. They all want to know who won the Oscars.
Yeah, I'm dying to tell y'all. I really am, but I can't, unfortunately. That's one of the reasons that they call me and they hire me, is because I know how to keep my mouth shut. You're not going to see my name and any movie star's name up on social media or in the, so I wish I could tell you, but I can't.
That's an interesting tidbit. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to let you answer then another question at this time.
Sure.
Let's see. How did your personal interests or hobbies apply to this job now? I know you gave us a little bit of background how you got here, but the question is about your personal interest and hobbies applying now to your current job.
Yeah. Well, my belief about being able to present yourself, and I would say that this is a lesson for all of us, and I'm sure my colleagues know this already, that the ability to get out there and present yourself well in a way that projects confidence, that projects knowledge and authority, and all of those other positive qualities. Is a way to invite people in, is a way to have people want to learn, to know more. In any event, regarding my first career, which was of course a hobby, and it was all consuming because it was in the performing arts, and it's something that I think people tend to underestimate the arts as a career because they think that it won't lead to anything else, and that's just wrong. So Mr. Manning had a great deal to say about how he got where he was. Both of my children are in the arts, both of whom graduated from GHS several years ago. My late husband was an artist, was a visual artist as well, and I was an artist to begin with. What the arts allows you to do is to think about things in a unique way. You know, life is not a series of multiple choice questions like it is on tests. Life is more like the arts, actually, where you think about things deeply and you make decisions and judgments based on what you see and what you feel. And so I think the arts gave me a very good opportunity, not only to learn the craft of performing and telling stories, which is basically what I teach to other people, but also to think in this new and very broad way. So I'm going to leave it at that and say, boy, you know, listen to your music, do your, you know, draw your pictures, and whether you major in it or not, it's a wonderful thing to be involved in as a hobby.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. I'm just going to pose one question now for the whole group, and I'll just I'll ask each one of you to speak up at some point. So a question asked by one of the students is, were there any outside influences that has inspired your career choice? Now you've all talked a lot about what intrinsically motivated you to get where you are, but did you have that certain someone on the outside? Did someone say, hey, tap you on the shoulder, maybe you should be doing this? You know, as an educator, we do a lot of tapping on shoulders. We see a lot of things that we would love for our students to do. We're like, hey, why don't you try this? So did you have that kind of influence, or did this really come from inside yourself? So Ruth, while I have you still on the screen, if you want to first answer the question.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Thank you. Stupidly, no. I did not have a mentor for a very long time because I worked on my own. I thought I knew everything, and it was really pretty stupid, really dumb. So what I ended up doing late in the game, frankly, was to hire a business coach. So I ended up hiring and paying money to somebody who could be my mentor, somebody who could do that tapping on the shoulder or kick my rear end, you know, and make me do things that I didn't want to do. And that was something that was a huge revelation for me. And I still hire coaches. For example, when I did a TED Talk a couple of years ago. And when I did that, I hired a speaking coach. Even though I'm a professional speaker, I do that myself. So being objective about myself, however, it was very different from me teaching other people or helping other people with their content and their delivery. So I am not averse, and I'm not afraid to hire somebody to come in and help me anymore. But I would start early. Find those mentors, find the people who you trust, who can teach you something. You can do that at the job. You can do that outside the job. Maybe you have parents or a relative in a profession that you want to know more about, or even just if they're in business, they can help you with that kind of thing. So I absolutely am. I'm a huge fan of it. And I tell my kids, don't follow my footsteps in that regard.
Great, thank you so much. Let's see, Kaan, how about you?
On mute. There we go. Yeah. So mine really was. I went to my older brother's graduation, and I listened to the speaker, and most of it was really boring. but then he started giving advice to all the graduating seniors, which my brother was one of. And at that point, I was just coming into college. And one of his advice that stuck with me was, you know, when you're ready for work, go work where the action is. You know, go to a big city, go where there's a lot of businesses, there's a lot of options, there's a lot of people. And coming out of RPI, a lot of it is you go work for manufacturing companies like GE or those types of places. And I decided when I got out of school, I'm going to work for a company in New York City, so I can be in New York City. I can be in that heartbeat. I can be around people. I can meet people that are in different industries and such. And that really worked out for me. So it really didn't have anything to do with like what career I picked. It really ended up being, I want to work for a company that's in just where the action is, where everything is. So to me, that was the driving point. You know, get an apartment that I barely fit in, pay way too much money for, you know, broke, you know, bankrupt by the time, you know, my next paycheck is about to come, and really enjoy being just a part of a fabric of just exciting, lots going on, and to be part of something big. And I'll say that was, I don't know why that little piece of that speech stuck with me, but it really helped me out, especially in the career I picked. So that was my advice.
Great, thank you so much. Sydney.
So I guess my grandfather would say that he's the reason I am an engineer. When I was really little, I helped him work on cars or the chair I'm sitting in right now. So like I said before, I've always been hands-on. When I was in college and I was trying to figure out what to do next, when I realized bio wasn't my thing, I had an academic advisor through the sports, and I would down with them almost daily, if not weekly, to figure out what I was going to do next. My dream at that point was to design prosthetic legs. And from there, that's how we decided that mechanical engineering would be the best route for me. I'm obviously not doing that today. This career is not something I had ever even heard of, but right now it's pretty interesting. So I definitely did look for help in that guidance when I didn't know what to do next. But yeah, otherwise my grandfather would say that it all goes back to him.
Great, thanks, Sydney. And finally, Michael, if you could answer the question.
Sure, you're going to hear some announcements in the background but we can do. Anyway, ironically, Sydney, you said your grandfather. For me, it was my grandmother, but in a different way. No particular mentor, but I think one of the things, I'm going to put you on mute for just 1 second. Okay, so anyway, dismiss your classes. Have a good day. One of the things my grandmother gave me was like a confidence that, and this is something I would say to you as high school students, whatever you're interested in, find it and embrace it. And that becomes a source of who you are and how you interact with everyone. And for me, art, and basically coming from my grandmother, it gave me a self-confidence that it kind of tamps down your ego in a certain way and allows you, when something comes along, a mentor. I've had great mentors in my life that, you know, if I let go of my ego, I'm able to really interact with them in a different way. And I think that's one thing that they might think about. So when I, again, think about an influence, it was just more a way of viewing things that came from an internal self-confidence. It could be art, it could be sports, it could be math, whatever program that you're interested in high school, you know, that's the start of like what's going to make you who you become. So, you know, embrace that, whatever that is.
Great, thank you so much for that. I know it's hard when the bells are gonna ring. Our bell is actually about to ring also. We have about a minute and a half left, but at this point, we want to say a huge thank you to all of you for coming to our career panel. I think it was so great to listen to all of you. My AVID 10 class would like to thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Manning, you got a personal thank you back there from Brian Acosta.
I see a lot of them at the Boys and Girls Club and around town too. So
That's great. Great, thank you. So thank you, Julie.
But thank you, everybody, for participating today. And it's funny, as I put the panels together, I didn't realize what a creative group I had put together with your panel, with all of your backgrounds in different ways. So it's been interesting. Every single panel has been very interesting. And Senora Rabasa, thank you for moderating today. And really, everybody, thanks for blocking out the time. And students, all of the panelists, that whole packet that you have of all the different career panels that we've had, all of the panelists have said you can email anybody and ask questions and, you know, just learn a little bit more. This is starting out your networking with the people in front of you today. So thank you very, very much, everybody.